Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev, and what I want to talk about is the form data object. The form data object is something that's kind of built in HTML. It's a much easier way to work with forms than I've showed in the past. So let's first just show you like the HTML situation, just like what's built into HTML, CSS, and JavaScript without having to use any libraries, any tools, just what you can use straight out of the browser first. So I'll show you sort of like the old way I would show forms, and then I'll show you the form data object and how it kind of makes things easier. So we'll just create like a index.html, and we're just going to create some HTML boilerplate, and I'm going to create a form, okay, and then we'll put some inputs in there. So we'll just put one input type text. That's telling you what type of input it's going to be. A name. The name is always very important. It works in all sorts of different ways depending on what you're doing with it. But bottom line is it gives a name to the input that we can refer to. So we're just going to call this my text, and we'll put some placeholder, which just is some grayed out text to help instruct the user what they should type in the form. Type some text. Okay, we'll start off with that. I'll self-close the input tag, and then we'll have a submit button. So input type equals submit. Name, no name for submit buttons, and again name, no, not in that name, value equals submit form. And that's going to determine what's on the submit button. So let's close that tag. There we go. So basically the form tag is going to say, hey, anything inside the form tag is a form, and inside the form tag are inputs. And basically any input inside the form tag is treated as part of the form. Okay, so let's actually see it in action. So if I go over here and I open up with live server, okay, we open up the browser and you see the form over there on the side. So let me just get this so you can see kind of both at the same time. Okay, so you see the form here. That's all wonderful. Now there's a couple different ways you could use this. Okay, sort of the OG way of using forms is you would do like an action. Okay, and you would put some sort of URL here. So you'd say like slash, place, whatever. Okay, and then you would add like a method, and that would make, you'd say post. And essentially what this would do is that it would make a post request with the data from the form. So any data from the inputs inside the form would then be bundled up as a URL form encoded object data that can get sent to some URL. So you'd maybe have like a PHP script or an Express server. You'd have some sort of backend application that would then receive that request and do stuff with it. That's one way you can use it, okay? But a lot of times nowadays what we do is that instead of having the form send the data somewhere, what we do is we basically do it ourselves, okay? So we would use JavaScript for that. Okay, so there's my script tag, so I can write some JavaScript. And what I used to show is that I would say, okay, what we would do is we would, get some of these nodes in. So we'd get the form input in one thing. So that would be like document.query selector, and we would go get the form element. And then we would say const input, or we'll say text equals document.query selector, and then I would get the input, but not any input, the one that has a type of text. Okay, so that's what the square brackets means. Basically, whenever you use square brackets in CSS, this means an input tag, and then having the square brackets next to it means any input tag that has a type attribute, which we see right there, that equals text, which we see right there, a type that equals text. Okay, and actually even better, we'll target it's by its name. Okay. Now before I do anything else, what I'm going to do is I'm going to console log my two variables, because you should always console log your variables to make sure that they are what you think they are. Okay, because then you might be doing stuff and wondering why it's not working, and you never confirm that the variables are what you think they are. So yep, see the first variable is the form. I can see that right there in the DevTools, and I can see that the second variable is my input tag. So it's what I think it is. Good, I can move forward. Okay. Okay, cool. So basically what I would normally do is we'd say if we take the form, we'd add an event listener to it, and we say, hey, whenever you submit the form, something happens. Okay, and again, every event always receives an event object. So we'd say, you know, what's console.log text dot value, because again, every input has a value property, and that's what's typed inside the text box. Okay, so then now watch what happens. I type cheese, I hit submit, but there's nothing in there's no console log. You might have seen it show up there for a second if you were paying attention. But what happens is that forms by default, whenever you have a submit event, it thinks that you're trying to submit the data from the form to some other website. So it triggers a navigation, and a navigation refreshes the page because it thinks some server somewhere is going to send it a new page. Okay, but we're not doing that. So that's why what you need to do is you have to do this thing called event.prevent default. This function basically says form don't try to navigate away from the page. Like, just don't. Okay, but again, you have to declare the event object in order to use event.prevent default. Okay, wonderful. And that would work. So if I hit here cheese and I hit submit, I see cheese. Okay, so basically I can grab all the data from the form by putting each input in its own element. And that's fine. Okay. And then there are reasons you may still want to do that anyways. For example, if I wanted to clear out the form afterwards, what I would do is I would do like I would do text dot value equals nothing. So that way, after I submit the form, so I type in cheese, see the form resets, but the console log happens. Because after it logs, it resets the text inside the input. But generally what would happen is that like in here, like after the prevent default, before you reset the form, that's when you would do like an API call and send the data from the form to, to a post request to create something, or a put request to update something, or whatever you want to do. Okay. Well, maybe I don't want to have to create this extra variable, because what if I have like 100 inputs? Wouldn't that suck to have to create like 100 variables, one for each input, and then have to like go fetch each of their values one by one? Well, there is a way where you can just grab the form data as a whole. Okay, there's what's called a form data object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out this variable. We're not going to need that. Okay, well, maybe not, just because it's trying to comment. I'll comment that out like JavaScript. Oh, there we go. So we're going to change this, but instead what we do is we create a form data object. So we just say const form data equals a new full capital form data. And what you do is you just pass the form. So again, we have the form in this variable because we create that variable up here with the form. We pass the form to the form data constructor, and what this does, it creates an object that's going to have all the data from the form. So there's no need for me to create those additional variables for those additional inputs because the data is going to be right there. So now what I can do is I can get any piece of the form by just doing console.log, and I just take my form data object and it has a get function. In the get function, I put in the name of the input that I'm trying to access. So I'm saying, hey, I want to go, give me what's from the text input. Okay, now if I type in cheese, and there it goes. Okay, so now that may beg the question, how do I reset the form? Okay, well, let's see. Maybe this form data dot. Okay, so we got all these functions that are in there. So let's see here. Get all. That's if I want to get all the values. So let's see actually what that does. Okay, so let me console log the result of that. I'm curious. Okay, console.log form data. So the get all function, let's see what it returns. So if I do cheese, uncut error, try to execute get all form data. One argument was required, but only 0 were present. Okay, so there is a function that's required, an argument. So let's see what it says. Name string. Okay, so let's see if I type in text. What does it say? So I guess you still got to name a field. Cheese. Okay, so it provides you the values as an array, but it still provides it for you for one input, which would be useful if you had multiple inputs with the same name and you wanted all their values to be an array. Okay, which there are reasons you would do that. So you might, do this thing where you keep adding additional inputs, saying, okay, hey, do you want to add, like you're making a list of things and you're adding additional inputs. You give all the inputs the same name, and then you can use this get all to get all those inputs with the same name as an array of data. Okay, so that's neat. Let's see what else we can find in here. So FormData dot append is if you want to actually add data, delete entries. Let's see what entries gets us. Okay, let me just get back out of here. I have an idea of what it's going to get us, but let me just confirm that it does give me what I think that would give me. Okay, it gives me an iterator. That's not what I expected, but what an iterator is something you can iterate over, so you can loop over it. So let's try this. So let's try looping over it and see what it gives us. So let's say for let thing of form data dot entries. Okay, form data dot entries. So because that way we can find out what the thing is, and then let's console.log the thing. Let's see what does it create as an iterable. What can we loop over? So again, I'll type in cheese here. Let's submit the form. Okay. Yep. Okay. So that's what it's going to do. That's what I figured it was going to do. Because usually when you see entries, it generally means arrays with two values. The first being the key, the second being the value. So what it's doing, it's giving you an array of arrays to loop over, where each array has two strings, one being the key, one being the value. Okay, so that's a thing you can do there with the form data object. Okay. And then let's see here. What other methods we have in here? Form data. Oh, values. Let's see what values brings us. So let's do that. Cheese. Okay, it's another iterator. So that's just going to be an iterator over the values, because usually entries gives you the double arrays. Values is going to give you just the value part, not the key. Okay, so that's a thing. Let's see here. Values, keys. That's going to get you the keys. That's if you want to check if it has it. Okay, so let's try that. Has. Okay, so first we're going to see, does it have text, which it should, because we know there's a text field called text. So let's see, if I hit here, cheese, that should get true. Yep, so I get true because it has cheese. But it doesn't have something called bread. We don't have an input called bread. There's no input with the name of bread, so I should get a false. So let's try that. Cool. And that's just a way you can check to say, hey, make sure that, hey, was there input for this? Now, the next thing I wonder is if I change this back to text, if I just don't enter any data at all. So if I change it back to text and I enter no data in here, and I hit submit form, it still gives me back true. So that means you're really checking whether the input exists. Okay. Okay. Cool. Now let's see here. Dot. Then there's set. So my question is going to be whether if I use set, I can change the value of the data in the form data object, but does that change the data in the form? So that's going to be what we're going to experiment on now. So let's see, because if not, if that works and that updates the form, then I don't need to use all those variables to clean up the form and reset the form. I can just use formData.set. So let's see here. Let's see here. I go formData.set. And actually, that should probably take two arguments, right? Let me just do that. Yeah, so it takes a name and a value. So I want to change the text string back to a blank. Okay, so let's try this out. I hit cheese. Okay, yeah, so that doesn't change the value on the form, which is what I figured. That just changes it inside the form data. Okay, so I would still probably want to go back and reset the form in that case. Let's see here. Are there any other methods that might allow us to reset the form? Delete values. Well, that's pretty much it. But it gives you a really easy way to kind of get the data from the form without you having to create a variable for every input if you don't want. Again, if you're going to reset the form, you probably still may need to do that. But a lot of time what happens is that usually the form leaves the page. So there's nothing you have to really worry about because you're going to remove the form. Like because they're going to, if you're using like a client-side router, they'll sit there and say, okay, hey, render this instead of that. They submitted it, do the thing, and then remove it from the screen. So then you're not worrying about the reset. Okay, so that's not necessarily a big issue depending on how you make your site. But cool. But now that you're aware that there's this form data object, you can use this when you're writing things like React. Okay, whether it's Svelte, Vue, you can kind of follow the same pattern. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a React app real quick. So I am going to hit new terminal and say create React app. Well, I got to do npx create React app form stuff. Again, if you're not familiar with React, feel free to, or you're not familiar with any of those kind of frameworks, React, Vue, Svelte, Solid, then you probably got what you're going to get out of this video at this point. You know how to work with an HTML form now. Okay? Moral of the story is you create a submit event, and then you prevent the default so the page doesn't refresh, and then you can go get the data from the form by constructing a new form data object. And then you can do FormData.get to get the data. Okay, but if you do know React or any of those other frameworks, I'm going to show you a way that's going to simplify doing forms in a lot of those frameworks by leaning into what's already available in HTML. So I will pause this, set up that React app. Actually, let me just hit enter here so it starts doing that. But yeah, and then once that's created, well, yeah, that's right. I always got to do the latest flag because my npm is kind of weird. Okay, so that's going to install that for me, and I will pause this while that installs. Okay, the React app is done being generated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd into that React app. Let's start the React app, npm start. That'll start the React app, which should pop up here in the browser in just a moment. And generally you can get nice form components and form libraries in a lot of libraries, but it's pretty easy to create your own form component instead of having to install a library every time. And then you can customize it depending on your needs. But here's a pretty good generic form component that'll make your life a lot easier. Okay, so I'm going to just first create a new file, form .js. I won't even bother making a components folder for now. Export default function form props. Okay, and essentially what we're going to do is all we're going to do is return a form tag, and in there we'll put props.children. That's how you make things show up from like anything that's wrapped in that tag. So basically that's the props.children. I'll restate that when we actually demonstrate it. Okay, so that's gonna basically make the form appear in the HTML. But what I'm gonna want to do is make sure that that form we put a submit event on that form. So what I'm going to do is we're going to create a handle submit function. So handle submit, const handle submit equals an event. And this, what we're going to do here is we're going to first prevent the default, event.prevent default. Then we're going to create the form. So const form data equals new form data. Although I need, well, actually I can just do this, event dot target, because the event dot target should be the form. So I don't need to actually have the form in a variable, because in the event object there's event dot target, which is whatever the thing that triggered it, which is the submission of the form. So I can just create it from the target form like that. So that's going to create the form data. And then what we'll do is we're going to create an extra object just in case you ever need to pass extra data to the function. So we'll call it const equals props dot context. Okay, so that'll be something that can be passed in as props. Okay, and if props.context isn't available, it'll just be an empty. It'll be if props.context exists, then make it props.context. If it does not exist, then it should just be an empty object. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to call a function that gets passed in as props. So we'll say props dot on submit. Okay, props dot on submit. We're going to call that function and we're going to pass it an object with the event, the form data, and the context. Okay, so and then we just say, hey, whenever you submit this form, so on submit, call that handle submit function. Okay, so literally what's going to happen is at any time this form is submitted, it's going to call this handle submit function, which is going to prevent the default, so that way it doesn't refresh. It's going to create data, the form data object from the form's inputs. We're going to have this context object. That's just going to be a way for you to pass additional data if you need to. And then yeah, so that will have access to the event, the form data, and the context. So now I can use this form whenever I want. Okay, and this works. So now I can go over here, let's say the app, and I can use this form as many times as I want. I'll just sit there and go like import form, okay, and just say form, and we'll just start with just form for now. Now put input, okay, input of type equals text with a name of text. Then we'll have a submit button, input type equals submit. And that's fine too. Okay, and so we have this button here. Right now it's not gonna do anything because I don't have I never passed that prop, the on submit prop. So I need to do that. On submit, because again I typed it all in lowercase when I made the prop. See right here. Although I should probably keep it consistent and do that. So that way when I go over here in app, I would just do form.onSubmit, and then I can just pass it a function. And I'll just say, hey, when this comes in, all I'm going to do is I'm going to destructure that form data argument from that object that gets passed in, and just say, hey, whenever, what happened there? Why is the div in there? I don't know why. Div, form. What do we not like here? Let's get rid of these parentheses. Oh, these curly brackets shouldn't be here. Actually, they should have. It's parentheses, then curly brackets. And again, what I'm doing here is I'm destructuring from that first argument because we can see now I am passing this function an object with three things in it: event, form, data, context. So then that means in the function definition I can destructure those things. And then I can just be like console.log form data.get text, and then we'll figure out what that. Where do I have too many parentheses? So this is all fine. What does this parenthesis match up with? Nothing. I think this parenthesis is the problem. Yep, there we go. Okay, and see, so this form is going to work. So Control Shift I to open up the inspector. Let me refresh this page so that we just clear up the console. I'll type in cheese here, and it works. Okay, so this is a much simpler than doing the controlled and uncontrolled forms that are very typical in React. And the cool thing about this is you're just leaning on the way the browser works and taking advantage of this form data object. And you can do this in Svelte, you can do this in Vue, you can do this in Angular. There's no need for you to do anything different in any framework. This is technically what happens in things like React Router when they're passing you the form data object, and other things. So yeah, so that's how you can use forms in a really easy way to make using your favorite front end framework much easier than a lot of times where you're doing like binding the values of inputs to variables and doing all this fun jazz. You could just use the form data object and get that form data pretty easily and make a reusable form component like this, because now all I have to do is just use this form component anywhere I have a form, pass it a function to handle the data in the form, and then that's it. Okay, I don't have to do all the other fun magic in working with forms. Okay, and if you're using React, you can use React Router, which generally has a form component that works in a really good built-in way. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. My name is Alex Merced. Apologize, my voice is kind of lost at the moment, but I will see you all around. And again, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Have a great day and enjoy.